The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of regret. I never planned on stopping for the guy standing there soaked and defeated beside his stalled car. But something in his slumped shoulders hit me harder than the storm itself. I pulled over, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't name. "Hey, you okay?" I called out, rolling down the window. The man looked up, water streaming down his face. He was about my age, maybe a bit older, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and eyes that held a mix of frustration and gratitude. "Car died on me. Phone's dead too. You mind giving me a lift?" he shouted over the thunder. I hesitated for a split second. My life was all about control. Tight schedule at the marketing firm, weekly calls with my parents in Indiana who still thought I was the perfect straight son they'd raised. But something made me unlock the door. "Get in. I'll take you where you need to go." He climbed in, dripping all over the seat, and introduced himself as Lorenzo Rossi. As we drove toward his apartment in the Loop, he talked about being a freelance photographer caught in the storm after a late client meeting. His laugh was warm, disarming, and for those 20 minutes, I forgot about the walls I'd built around myself. We exchanged numbers when I dropped him off, just in case. "Thanks, man. You saved me tonight," he said, his hand lingering a second too long on mine as he shook it. I drove away, telling myself it was nothing. The next morning at Sterling Advertising in downtown Chicago, my world was crashing. Mr. Harlan, my boss, stood in my office with crossed arms. "Nathaniel, the Thompson campaign files are corrupted. Deadline missed. This is grounds for termination. Clean out your desk." My chest tightened. The files had been sabotaged. I suspected my colleague Derek, who had been eyeing my promotion and had made snide comments about guys like me, after seeing me at a bar once. I was closeted for a reason. My family would disown me if they knew. This job was my shield. That's when the door swung open. Lorenzo walked in, looking sharp in a tailored jacket, carrying a portfolio. "Mr. Harlan, I'm Lorenzo Rossi, the freelance consultant you hired last week for the Thompson visuals. I was with Nathaniel last night reviewing the files when the system glitched. Here's the backup drive I made on my laptop. He's the reason we didn't lose everything." Harlan blinked, checked the USB, and the color drained from his face. "Well, this changes things. Nathaniel, you're staying. Good work pulling this together." Lorenzo winked at me as he left the office, leaving me stunned. How did he know where I worked? The business card I'd handed him in the car. He had come back to save me. From that moment, my carefully constructed life began to shift. Lorenzo texted later, "Coffee to celebrate the save? My treat." I agreed, not knowing it was the beginning of everything I had spent years trying to bury. We met at a small cafe near the office, the kind with exposed brick and strong espresso. Lorenzo was even more striking in daylight. Confident, open, with a smile that made my guarded heart stutter. "You didn't have to do that today," I said, stirring my coffee too vigorously. He shrugged. "You didn't have to stop for a stranger in the rain either. Consider us even." But it wasn't even. He had no idea what he had just protected. My job, my secret, my fragile sense of control. As we talked about his photography gigs and my campaigns, I felt a pull I hadn't allowed myself in years. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my phone, his number glowing on the screen, and wondered how long I could keep pretending the spark was just gratitude. The week that followed blurred into a careful dance. Lorenzo started consulting regularly at Sterling on the Thompson project, which meant we crossed paths daily. He was professional in meetings, but in the quiet moments, grabbing lunch or walking to the elevator, he asked questions that dug deeper. "You seem like you've got the world figured out, Nathaniel. But something tells me there's more under the surface." I deflected with work talk, but his presence chipped away at my defenses. At home, my mother called from Indiana, reminding me about Sunday Mass and asking when I'd bring a nice girl home. "Soon, Mom," I lied, the word tasting like ash. Derek watched me with narrowed eyes, whispering to other colleagues. The tension at work thickened, but Lorenzo's steady support kept me afloat. He never pushed, yet every conversation felt like an invitation to be honest. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But for the first time, the idea of letting someone in didn't feel like the end of the world. It felt like the start of something terrifying and real. By the end of the second week, Lorenzo and I had fallen into an easy rhythm that scared me more than any boss's glare. We grabbed drinks after work at a quiet bar downtown, the kind where the lights were low and conversations stayed private. He told me about growing up in a big Italian family in New York, how he had come out at 19 and never looked back. It wasn't easy at first, but hiding who I am cost more than facing the truth ever did, he said one evening, his eyes meeting mine across the table. I nodded, swallowing hard, my own secrets burning in my throat. I changed the subject to the latest campaign tweaks, but inside, his words echoed like a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. Work became both sanctuary and battlefield. The Thompson project was thriving thanks to Lorenzo's fresh visuals, and Mr. Harlan praised me in front of the team. Derek, however, grew bolder in his sabotage attempts, misplacing my notes, spreading rumors about my late nights. One afternoon, he cornered me in the break room. You think that pretty consultant is going to keep saving your ass forever? People are talking, Nathaniel. About you too. My stomach twisted. I laughed it off, but the fear settled deep. That evening, Lorenzo noticed my distraction during our usual walk to the train. Everything okay? You look like you're carrying the whole city on your shoulders. I wanted to tell him about Derek, about my parents, about the voice in my head that screamed I was broken for feeling this pull toward him. Instead, I said, just work stuff. Family stuff too. The usual. He didn't press, but he placed a hand on my shoulder, warm and steady. I'm here if you ever want to unload. No judgment. The weekend brought a surprise invitation. Lorenzo asked if I wanted to join him on a photo shoot in Millennium Park. Nothing formal, just capturing the city. Could use an extra pair of hands. I said yes before I could overthink it. The day was bright, a rare break from the rain that had started everything. We laughed as he directed models and I held reflectors, the easy camaraderie making me forget my carefully guarded life for hours. When the shoot wrapped, we sat on a bench overlooking the Bean, sharing street tacos. You know, Lorenzo said softly, I haven't stopped thinking about that night in the rain. You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't. I looked at him then, really looked, and the air between us shifted. For a split second, I imagined leaning in, letting the walls crumble. But my phone buzzed. Mom again asking about church. I pulled back. Glad I did, I murmured. The moment passed, but the longing stayed. Back at the office on Monday, the tension peaked. Derek had gone to HR with concerns about my focus, twisting our coffee runs into something sinister. Mr. Harlan called me in. Nathaniel, we need to talk about these rumors. The firm's image. I felt the ground shifting under me again. Lorenzo, waiting outside for a meeting, overheard and stepped in without hesitation. Those rumors are baseless. Nathaniel's the reason this campaign is on track. If anyone's distracted, it's the one spreading lies. His defense was calm, powerful. Harlan backed down, but the damage was done. Whispers followed me all day. That night, alone, I paced my apartment, replaying every glance, every touch. Lorenzo texted, "You okay after today? Wanna grab dinner and talk it out?" I stared at the message for 10 minutes before replying yes. Meeting him at the little Italian place he loved felt like stepping toward a cliff. Over pasta and wine, I finally cracked the surface. My family, they wouldn't understand if I was different. Lorenzo listened without interruption, his eyes kind. Different isn't wrong, Nathaniel. It's just you. For the first time, the word you felt like freedom instead of fear. But freedom came with a price I wasn't sure I could pay yet. The misunderstandings with Derek were only the beginning, and my internal storm was far from over. Dinner with Lorenzo stretched late into the evening, the restaurant emptying around us as we talked about everything and nothing. He shared stories of his first heartbreak, the courage it took to rebuild, and the friends who became family when blood fell short. I listened, nodding, my own chest tight with words I couldn't voice. When he walked me to my car afterward, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, he said quietly, "You don't have to carry it alone. Whatever it is." I wanted to believe him. The drive home was a blur of conflicting thoughts. Gratitude for his steady presence clashing with the terror of what opening up might mean. The next few days at work tested that fragile trust. Derek escalated, leaking a doctored email suggesting I had missed deadlines because of personal issues. HR scheduled a formal review. I spent the morning rehearsing defenses in the mirror, my reflection looking as exhausted as I felt. Lorenzo found me in the hallway, sensing the panic. "Hey, whatever happens in there, remember why you started this job. You've got more fight than they know." His words steadied me through the meeting. I presented the facts, the backup files, the client feedback. Harlan cleared me, but warned, "Keep it professional, Nathaniel. No more distractions." Derek shot me a smug look as I left. The betrayal stung deeper than I expected, not just from a colleague, but from the system that rewarded silence. That weekend, Lorenzo invited me to a small gallery opening where his photos were on display. The space was filled with vibrant cityscapes and intimate portraits, each frame telling a story of resilience. One image caught me. A man standing alone in the rain, shoulders squared against the storm. "That's how I felt the night you found me," Lorenzo said softly beside me. "Until you showed up." The parallel hit hard. We wandered the exhibit, his hand brushing mine once, twice. The contact sent sparks I couldn't ignore. Over drinks at the after-party, a mutual friend of his, a bubbly artist named Mia, pulled me aside. "Lorenzo doesn't bring just anyone here. You matter to him." Her words lodged in my throat. On the walk back to the train, I stopped under a street lamp. "Lorenzo, I don't know how to do this. The hiding, the fear. It's all I know." He turned to face me, rain starting to fall lightly again, like a callback to our beginning. "Then let's figure it out together. One step." I didn't kiss him that night, but the almost was enough to keep me awake until dawn. Monday brought family complications I couldn't escape. My parents announced a surprise visit to Chicago for my cousin's wedding. "We want to meet your friends, see your life," Mom said on the phone, her tone warm but laced with expectation. Panic set in. Lorenzo offered to help plan a casual dinner, but I hesitated. They wouldn't get it. Us. He didn't push, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. The visit went as feared. Mom grilled me about dating. Dad joked about settling down with a good woman. I smiled through it, Lorenzo's name never leaving my lips. When they left, the guilt crushed me. I met Lorenzo at our cafe, the weight of the weekend heavy. I froze. "I'm sorry." He reached across the table. "I get it. But every time you hide, a piece of you disappears. I see it." The misunderstanding lingered between us for days. Me pulling back, him giving space. Work suffered slightly, Derek circling like a shark. Then came the breaking point. An anonymous tip to HR about inappropriate conduct between consultants and staff. Fingers pointed at us. Lorenzo confronted me in the stairwell. "If this costs me the contract, so be it. But I won't let it cost you your peace." His sacrifice hit me like the rain that started it all. In that moment, I realized the choice wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about deciding what I was willing to lose to be whole. The internal crisis deepened, pulling me toward a crossroads I had avoided for years. The HR investigation dragged on for a week, casting a shadow over every meeting and email. I threw myself into the Thompson campaign, working late to prove my worth, but the whispers followed me like shadows. Derek smiled too much in the hallways, his betrayal a constant reminder that silence wasn't protection. It was a cage. Lorenzo kept his distance at the office, professional to a fault, but his texts at night grounded me. "Still here. Whenever you're ready. I appreciated the space, yet it ached. My parents' visit had stirred old fears, their expectations a noose tightening around the truth I could no longer ignore. One evening after a grueling day, I showed up at Lorenzo's apartment unannounced, rain soaking me once more. He opened the door, surprise turning to concern. "Nathaniel? Come in." Over takeout on his couch, the words finally spilled. I told him about the college boyfriend I'd pushed away, the family sermons that made me question my worth, the nights I lay awake wondering if love like this was even possible for someone like me. Lorenzo listened, his hand resting on mine. "You're not broken. You're surviving. But surviving isn't living." That night, we didn't cross any lines, but the honesty felt like the deepest intimacy. I left feeling lighter, yet the fear of consequences loomed. Work tension exploded midweek. "Mr. Harlan called us both in. The client loves the work, but these rumors are bad for optics. Lorenzo, your contract is up for review. Nathaniel, one more complaint and we're reevaluating your role." The threat hung heavy. Outside the office, Lorenzo turned to me. "I can step back if it protects you." His offer was pure sacrifice, but it ignited something fierce in me. "No. We face this together." For the first time, I chose us over safety. That decision sparked a chain reaction. I confronted Derek directly in the break room, voice steady. "Your game's end now. I know what you did." He laughed it off, but the seed of doubt was planted in the team. Support trickled in from unexpected colleagues who had seen through the lies. Family pressure mounted when Mom called again, this time sensing something in my voice. "You sound different, honey. Is there someone?" I deflected, but the lie tasted bitter. Lorenzo suggested I practice small truths, maybe mentioning a close friend. The idea terrified me, yet his patience gave me courage. We spent a quiet Saturday hiking along the lakefront, the city skyline gleaming under clear skies. "Whatever happens," he said as we paused at the water's edge, "I'm proud of the man you're becoming." The words wrapped around my heart like a promise. Back at his place, we cooked dinner together, laughter filling the kitchen. For hours, the world outside ceased to exist. But Sunday brought reality. A text from my sister warning that Dad had heard rumors from a family friend in Chicago. "They're worried you're influenced by city life." The message shook me. I paced Lorenzo's living room, panic rising. "If they find out, I'll lose them." He pulled me into a hug, not romantic but solid. "You might, or they might surprise you. Either way, you won't lose yourself." The crisis forced a choice: continue hiding and risk losing Lorenzo, or step forward and risk everything else. I chose the step, small as it was, inviting him to a low-key team dinner as my friend. The night went smoother than expected, but Derek's glare promised more trouble. The misunderstandings with my family simmered, a betrayal of my own making that I knew would demand reckoning. Yet with Lorenzo beside me, the path forward felt possible, even if paved with uncertainty. The team dinner marked a quiet victory, but the aftershocks rippled through my life like cracks in ice. Colleagues who had stayed neutral now offered subtle nods of support, sensing the shift. Derek, however, doubled down, filing a formal complaint with fabricated details about disruptive behavior. HR summoned me again. This time, I walked in with evidence, timestamps on the sabotaged files, emails proving his interference. Lorenzo waited outside, his presence a silent anchor. The meeting ended with Derek placed on probation and an apology issued to me. Relief flooded through me, but it was bittersweet. The victory came at the cost of exposing just enough of my truth to make the office air feel thinner. Family confrontation arrived sooner than I expected. My parents drove up unannounced for a heart-to-heart. We met at a neutral diner, their faces lined with worry and judgment. "People are talking, Nathaniel, about this friend of yours. We raised you better." The words landed like blows. I defended Lorenzo without naming the depth of our connection, but the disappointment in Dad's eyes cut deep. "If this is what the city does to you, maybe it's time to come home." Mom cried quietly, I left the diner raw, driving straight to Lorenzo's. He opened the door and I broke down for the first time in years. They don't see me. They see what they want. He held me through it, no pressure, just presence. Then show them the real you when you're ready. Not for them. For you. Work stabilized, but the emotional toll mounted. I threw myself into the campaign launch, Lorenzo by my side in every late-night session. Our bond deepened through shared silences and small gestures. A coffee left on my desk, a text checking in. One evening after a successful client presentation, we walked along the river, city lights dancing on the water. I think I'm falling for you, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Lorenzo stopped, turning to face me. I've been falling since the rain. The confession hung between us, beautiful and terrifying. We didn't rush anything physical, but the emotional intimacy felt profound. Yet the sacrifices weighed heavy. Lorenzo had turned down a lucrative out-of-state gig to stay and support me. You're worth it, he said simply. The ultimate test came when an old college friend visited Chicago and recognized Lorenzo from past circles. At dinner, he casually outed the nature of our relationship to a group text that somehow reached my sister. The phone calls started immediately. Accusations, tears, demands for explanations. This isn't who you are, Dad shouted over the line. I defended myself, heart hammering, but the rejection stung like fire. Lorenzo offered to step away temporarily, to give me space to mend fences. I won't be the reason you lose your family. His willingness to sacrifice everything for my peace nearly broke me. I refused. You've saved me too many times already. Now it's my turn to fight for us. The decision sparked a week of sleepless nights and heated family arguments. I confronted the pain head-on, writing long letters I never sent, processing the loss of their unconditional acceptance. Through it all, Lorenzo remained steady, reminding me that growth often meant grief. The betrayal from my own blood tested every limit, but it also clarified what mattered. In the quiet aftermath, I realized I had awakened something unbreakable inside myself. The journey had cost pieces of my old life, but it had given me a future I could finally claim. Months after the family storm, the pieces of my life began settling into a new shape. Sterling Advertising promoted me to senior account manager, crediting the Thompson campaign's success and my resilience under pressure. Derek had quietly transferred departments, his influence faded. The office felt lighter, colleagues treating me with a respect that came from seeing me stand firm. Lorenzo's consulting contract extended, his photography now woven into every major pitch. We navigated the days with quiet pride, our connection no longer a secret but a strength. Evenings belonged to us. Walks along the lake, gallery openings, simple dinners where conversations flowed without fear. One crisp autumn afternoon, Lorenzo took me to the exact spot where his car had stalled that rainy night. Full circle, he said, pulling me close. This time I didn't hesitate. We embraced under the same sky that had once threatened to drown us, the moment tender and full of promise. The happiness wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the deep peace of knowing I had chosen myself. My family remained distant, occasional calls polite but guarded. I mourned the loss but refused to let it define me. Therapy helped, and Lorenzo's unwavering support filled the gaps. You didn't lose them forever, he reminded me gently. But you gained you. The growth showed in small ways. I volunteered at a local LGBTQ center, sharing my story anonymously at first, then openly. Colleagues asked for advice on inclusion initiatives. The man who once hid in shadows now stood in light. Lorenzo and I talked about the future. Maybe a shared studio apartment, travel for his shoots, a life built on honesty. The sacrifices had been real. Strained family ties, workplace battles, nights of doubt. But the rewards, self-acceptance, a love that saw every flaw and chose to stay, outweighed them all. As we sat on a bench overlooking the city one evening, Lorenzo turned to me. Remember the stranger you helped in the rain? I smiled. Best decision I ever made. He laughed, the sound warming me more than the setting sun. The journey had been messy, filled with misunderstandings and hard choices, but it had led us here, to a happiness rooted in truth. I had grown from a man trapped by fear into one who embraced his heart fully. Looking at Lorenzo, I knew the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. True or false? Hiding who you are can ever truly protect the people you love?